Welcome back. We are talking to Helga Musyoki, the Programs Manager of the MAPS program under the National AIDS Control Program. Now, Helga, before we took the break, we were talking about some of the interventions your program has put in place to prevent transmission of HIV. We talked about providing free condoms, free lubricants for commercial sex workers, and that is where we were at. What are some of the other interventions that you're working on?
We are also using the peer education system, and we are using a peer. For example, if I tell you to go to the streets to conduct a testing campaign, as Marianne now, you're not going to get any single sex worker. You're not going to get any single MSM or a single injecting drug user. But use an injecting drug user to get another one, and the sex worker to get another one. You're going to get them. So when you use peer education and peer outreach services, then we're able to get these people to come for services. So that is the approach you're using to do to conduct things like testing campaigns, cervical cancer screening campaigns, condom distribution and lubricant distribution, health education for them, and distribution of information and education materials to them. To the entire group? Yes. And is all this work happening all around the country, or is it in just the urban areas? It is happening all over the country. I think now we have a good coverage of partners and implementing partners all over the country. Initially, it was about the urban centers, but we realized that we also have these people in the rural setting. So we are trying to have the same services in the rural areas. Yeah, but of course we have a targeted focus for the urban areas where the prevalence is even higher than some of the rural settings. Like you mentioned, the coast. We all know the coast. There is a whole lot of sex work going on with the tourism. Where else is it very high? We have Nairobi. We have Coast Province generally. We also have Kisumu. And Kisumu, we are talking of Nyanza. Then we have Rift Valley. We also have Nyeri, I mean part of the Central Province. We have interventions there, and Meru. Actually in Meru we have one of the very good sites that are integrated, and we have sex workers attending clinic like any other person in a health service delivery point. Yeah, in Northeastern we still have, and yes, we also have services in Northeastern. And I hope you know in Northeastern we have a lot of cases of anal sex because of the fact that the community embraces virginity. And so most of the young girls are actually going for anal sex because at the end of the day, somebody will have to prove that they were virgins. So that is what is happening there. So again, we have to go there with interventions and tell them that anal sex is still more risky than the vaginal sex. It's interesting that you have to look at the cultural factors affecting wherever you are. Okay, but I am wondering, and I'm thinking most people who would be watching, you're giving free condoms to commercial sex workers, free lubricants to male sex workers. Don't you feel at some point that what these people are doing is wrong, and therefore you should be encouraging them to stop, yet what you're doing appears to be encouraging them to go on? I think one of the pillars and the basic principles that we're using in programming right now is evidence. And all our programs are evidence informed, and there is a very, very strong evidence, and studies have been conducted elsewhere, and I think in Kenya we are also going to be starting to conduct the same studies, especially when we start implementing the needle exchange program. Studies have shown that providing condoms to people, providing free needles and syringes does not actually increase the use. Because it's like telling Marianne, I give you a needle and syringe, I tell you start injecting. Will you start injecting today? Yeah, so the same approach. I mean, if you give a non-injecting drug user a needle, they're not going to inject, because what the gratification they get is from the maybe sniffing or oral taking. But an injecting drug user will actually have more benefit. We will have the intervention that you're giving more beneficial to him because you're making it safer. I'll give you like a story, and it's not really a story, it's actually a very bad case that happened in Coast Province. One time, in one of the hospitals, some of the chokoras actually stole a whole bag of used needles and syringes, and they went to sell to the injecting drug users.
Okay.
You know, in this era of HIV, almost every needle that you're coming across, or every needle and syringe is infected. And those needles and syringes were used by our own drug users. If we had provided a clean needle to those people, they would not have used the ones that are used. And so we exposed them to HIV by not providing them with clean needles and syringes that they cannot even afford. An injecting drug user will not have to go to buy a needle and syringe if they do not even have the drug itself. They'll steal a wall clock in your house and go and sell it to buy the drug, but look for a friend to have the syringe and needle, to borrow the needle and syringe from them. So their priority will not actually buying that syringe, but they can steal anything to get the drug. So what we are doing is really like looking at that and balancing and looking at the public health approach and telling them that we know that what you're doing might be wrong, but we want to help you to come out of it. Some of them will tell you, I honestly want to come out of this, but it's a process. It's a process. You can't just come and tell me to stop injecting drugs, yet I'm addicted. So we are using the needle exchange program as a bait, actually, to really bring them to services. And when they come now to services, we can give them health education. We can provide with them information about how to stop, how to get drug free and what you call abstinence, how to get into the drug treatment, because in line with the needle exchange program, we are also bringing what you're calling the medicated, medically assisted treatment. And what we give is now a drug to really like substitute what you've been taking. So this way we are able to reduce the rate of injections that you have to do. So you change this to oral. So if we're injecting your drug, now we are giving you an option of oral drug. And then we continue educating you, we continue telling you the disadvantages of being in drugs and helping you to come out of the drugs. So in future we'll create a society that is free of drugs, but it is a step by step. We cannot just stop it and lock them in prisons. We are not helping them.
You're not helping. Have you seen any cases where somebody starts off as a drug user, you give them the syringes, you pull them in by baiting them in whatever way, and they actually come out of it?
We have so many drug users that now our peer educators, they are not drug users anymore. They are we weaned them off, and they are our ambassadors right now.
That's nice.
We use them to preach to the rest that it is possible to be drug free in your life. It is possible to be productive again. Because what happens when the drug users now get into drugs, they lose their self-esteem. And because of the way the society treats them, they feel like they are useless and they don't do anything. They just sleep in the house, they're injecting themselves, and when they are high, they sleep. When they are up, they want to look for another drug to inject themselves just to forever be high. So we are using these peer leaders who are now drug free to really tell them that it is possible. I was once like you, and it is possible that you can actually get out of the drugs.
That's very encouraging that there's actually a light at the end of that dark tunnel. What are some of the challenges that you as a program have experienced in doing this, especially in the field? You know, there could be a lot of high-level policy planning and saying we are going to do this, but in terms of implementing, there must be a lot of little hitches that don't come together in the field.
One, I would say the cultural insensitivity. If you don't sensitize the society about why you're doing something and the benefit it is going to bring to the society in general, they're not going to accept your program. So you have to do a lot of advocacy. You have to have your ambassadors for the program in the community, and people who are going to tell the community members that this is going to be in the long run beneficial to this society. We are going to make these people again productive in the society, and they're going to get employment. They're going to be able to fend for their own families again. So you have to really do a lot of advocacy. The other challenge has been the role of media. Of course, media can be negative and positive. And I think over time, I think in the last 4 years, what we have seen is a lot of support now from the media. Initially, we used to have a lot of negative publicity. But now I think the media has come up and said that we want to help you because we believe this is beneficial to the society. The other thing is about coordination. We still have, and especially now with the harm reduction interventions, now everybody is coming with money for injecting drug users and they want to do interventions. So as a national program, again, we have to get a way of coordinating them and make sure that our shillings are going to the right place and we're actually getting a benefit from that. Then the issues of the religious bodies.
Yes, that
religion, of course, and again, we use ambassadors. We have some very, very strong religious leaders now who are coming and saying that we want to support you, we want to help you. And the first assignment we are giving them is that we want you to help us also to try and rehabilitate these people, because that way they're going to buy it. So if I'm going to give you a drug user, of course I'm going to give them the whole package of services, and those are health services. Then your other role is now to make them now get really rehabilitated by now using all your skills to make them now become members, normal members of the society.
But like initially, the safe churches, for example, how did they take it initially?
Of course, hostility. A lot of hostility because of lack of understanding initially. But with the education, I think now they are coming up and saying that we really believe that these are people who really need help. And this happens, for example, in the early 2010, we actually had a crisis, the heroin crisis. I know you heard about it. And we had over 4,000 injecting drug users coming with withdrawal symptoms. And you don't want to see an injecting drug user who has withdrawal. They look horrible and it's really pathetic. So they came up to Coast General Hospital, and the hospital was overwhelmed because we were not ready. But because of our mobilization of our implementing partners, our donors came in and we were able to salvage the situation. From then, I think the community learned that actually these are very sick people and we actually need to help them. So it's a matter of advocacy, educating people on the benefit of the program that you're going to do, and making sure that you involve them at every stage, not just come and dump a program in their doorsteps and expect them to buy it. No, you have to involve the community from the word go when you're starting to plan for that program.
Plan for them, because it's them involved. You had mentioned something about all these groups, but mostly commercial sex workers. There is the perception that they're happy to be where they are, you know, and that's also part of what I was wondering. Then, aren't we encouraging them to stay there? From what you've seen, are they receiving it in a way that they're saying we're happy, we are going to stay here? In fact, it was a good idea to do this. You know,
there is a very small majority, a minority of sex workers who would want to stay in sex work, and those are actually the sex workers who are well-to-do. And for example, the escort services. Escort services are sex workers who go with senior people, senior members of the community, and they'll take your notes in a meeting, they'll carry your laptop, they'll carry your jacket when you're tired, and they pose as an assistant. And those are highly professional sex workers. Those sex workers are professionals. They have their degrees, they have their diplomas, they are learned people of the society, and they are happy to be there. So for them, it's about education. There's nothing much you can do to them. The sex workers we are really concerned with are the sex workers who have less knowledge, who've not gone to school. Some of them have gone to school, but they're living in a vulnerable situation in the community. So they get into sex work because they have nothing else to do. They don't have a job and they have a family. Some of them maybe were raped at one point and they have a child that they have to raise. Others are school dropouts, and they do not have any other source of income. So the first thing they get into is to sex work. And this sex work actually they introduced by their friends because it is quick money. So these are our problems, and these are the sex workers we really want to target. And when you ask them, they never want their children to be sex workers. Actually, I want you to follow one sex worker at home, and you realize they are the best mothers. They have the most disciplined children. They have children who respect them, but of course they have to lie. There's no way they're going to tell their child, I'm going to do sex work in Koinange Street, for example, or in one of the streets in Westlands. They'll tell them, I'm working, and I do night shift, and I have to come back. And in the morning, they'll come back with shopping, and their child will believe. And in school, the child will say, my mother is a nurse. So most of them do not want their children to be in sex work, and they'll do anything to protect. And most of them do not even actually take the clients at home to their places where they live. They actually go out. MSM's the same. They tell you that the kind of the community that you're living in is too hostile for my child to be an MSM. So even them, they have their own reservations about their children. The same with the drug users. No one wants their children to be. So it tells you that we need to help them. And for those who choose to live sex work, for those who choose to live drug use, for those who feel that they can be heterosexuals, because some of them are bisexuals. They are both homosexuals and heterosexuals, and so they'll tell you that I want to live this lifestyle, and I was here, I was brought to this place by my friends, and it was because of money, so I would want to quit. So help them. But for those who choose not to, we cannot force them. Again, our program is based on evidence, and it is based on really an approach that is acceptable to the communities that we are serving.
And you talked of the sense of community among these people, which I thought is also very interesting, because they're helping them. Well, from what you're saying, you shall tell us a bit more.
One of the cases that we have is one of the drug using sites. And one of the service delivery points that we have in Kimathi, we have a center that looks at the challenges of female injecting drug users. They come there with their children. Some of them are breastfeeding. So you look at the sense of community, because when one injecting drug user is actually breastfeeding and is so high and the child drops in the floor.
You actually saw that happen?
Yes, I saw. And they picked the child, and they tried to slap this girl to wake up to breastfeed the child. And when she was not able to wake up, one of the drug users actually picked that baby and stayed with the baby until the lady got sober to be able to continue breastfeeding her child. So they love each other, and they help each other. And that is why the peer outreach and the peer network is really important in our program.
To reach them.
Yes.
Interesting. There's a lot of work that you've done as a program. What next? What next for next year, for years to come, to add on to the work that you're doing?
Okay. Our focus next year, and of course now we are getting challenges of the diddling funds. We have less funding in the whole HIV programs generally. And what we want to do is to look at the models that are sustainable. So initially we've been embracing the standalones because we had to get these people to come on board and show them that we're going to give services to them. But now we want to go to the integrated models. We want to have sex workers go to a place like Mbagathi Hospital, for example, to be treated like any other person. So it's just a matter of sensitizing the healthcare workers and training them to be friendly to the most at-risk populations, and also to make them really change their attitudes towards these people.
Stigma.
Yes, stigma reduction and all that. So we believe that by that doing, then we're going to be using the same funds that are used for the other programs. The other thing is about engaging the communities more. We want these programs to be community-led. We would want sex workers to be able to write proposals and run their own programs. That way we are going to be empowering them, and we are going to loosen the burden. Lessen the burden of really having them depend on HIV programs that are national.
Okay. That's a lot. Okay. We've been talking to Helga Musyoki, the coordinator of the MAPS program under NASCOP. Helga, there's definitely a lot more we could say about this. This is just the tip of the iceberg. But I hope you'll be joining us, at a later date to just talk about it more, get more details on it. Thank you very much for joining us. I have been your host, Marianne Bogo.